Don, you've been a research professor for many, many years. You've traveled the world lecturing and writing. Many of us here are just ordinary pastors, but you've also written a book called Memoirs of an Ordinary Pastor, which for me personally was perhaps your most helpful book to me. What advice would you give for ordinary folks like us, ministering in churches, maybe working for a missionary organization, about study?
In the same way that you don't drift into praying, you will pray only if you plan to pray. So you don't drift into good study habits. You have to plan to study. And that means putting time aside and surrounding yourself with the fences that guard you against. I mean, if you decide you're going to devote a morning to study, what you might be studying I'll come to in a moment. But you've left your computer on so that any new email or text message beeps at you, and you always interrupt to answer it most urgently. If the mail comes and Time Magazine or Spectator is just dropped on your desk, you're going to read that or whatever. It's very inefficient. You've got to block aside time for disciplined study. Then that's not only study for your actual ministry, for the next talk you're going to give, the next Bible study, the next evangelistic address or whatever. But I remember what John Stott used to recommend to his young men. Now, you have to remember he was single, and he was John. But on the other hand, he recommended that he tried to set aside a minimum of an hour a day for reading and study not connected with an address or something that he was going to give. An hour a day, a half day a week, a day a month, and a week a year. Now, life is so complicated, you can't count on that. Some of our schedules are so mixed up, you can't count on that either, and so on. But the idea of trying to read more than just what you need to read for the next talk is part of continuing education. It's part of a lifelong regimen of study. And then I would say a pastor is by definition a GP. So in most churches, do you use the term here, GP, a general practitioner? Yeah. So in the course of any year, in most churches, you'll have a few deaths, a handful of marriages, divorce challenges. Somebody has got to decide the layout of the preaching program for the church. What has been done over the last 10 years and where you're going in the future. Evangelism tracks, something that inspires toward world mission. Maybe you're going to do a series because you're trying to change some of the structures of the church as you've grown, and you have to prepare the way for that. Something encouraging devotional and prayer life and visiting missionaries and whatever. Meanwhile, the church is in the process of deciding what color the carpet is going to be. You're putting up a new building, and you've tried to funnel it all off to the deacons and all of that. But at the end of the day, somebody's still got to make final decisions. And you're a GP, whether you like it or not. And you don't have the freedom to be an ears, eyes, nose, and throat specialist. And that means that your reading correspondingly also has to be broader. The only way of not doing that, I think, is doing it, that is being pretty broad, and then setting aside certain times of the year for specialized study because you have the particular gift or grace. Are you familiar with Arnold Dallamore's George Whitefield? Arnold Dallamore went to seminary with my dad, so I knew him when I was a kid. And Arnold Dallamore was a pastor of Cottam Baptist Church in Ontario for 40 years. It's just a small country church where he served diligently, faithfully for 40 years in a small town. But every summer, he devoted every time he could to come back to the UK and look up resources to build toward what became a spectacularly good commentary on the life and ministry of George Whitefield. So, there might be somebody who can become a specialist that way, but not everybody has all those gifts and graces and time structures.